pierogi with sauerkraut and meat. This is a totally different taste for this very popular recipe of pierogi. So welcome to V's Cooking with Love channel, and thank you so much again for joining me on my pierogi marathon. And oh my gosh, you have to make those too. I know I keep saying this, but really oh, this is so good. You can make your food go so much further by adding some sauerkraut that is really good, healthy wise too for you, and come up with this delicious recipe. You don't even have to fry them. You can serve them different way too. You see, originally the dumplings, like I told you, they made it to Europe from Asia. They are now in different variations. It seems like every continent has some kind of different takeoff out there on them. I don't know if you've seen my potato and cheese recipe that I put out there too. Look at that picture. It speaks for itself. And not long ago I was visiting my daughters and my granddaughters, and these are pierogis we made together. My grandbabies are not big enough to help to make them, but they definitely help to eat them. Okay, so yes, I'll show you how to easily make these nice and fancy looking pierogis. Maybe you want to try them in a different style. I know that looks familiar, doesn't it? We'll tackle some of those too, and they can have different variations. You can serve them different too. You can fill them with different stuff. We made actually 3 different kinds of pierogis during my visit, like I said, with my daughters, and we even made them with fruit. But I also will tell you what to do with your dough leftovers, if you come up with any. But speaking of leftovers, this is the leftovers I hope you have when I put out this pork roast butt recipe. But you can also utilize different leftovers wherever that you are working with. Could be even a ham, just don't use too much of it. It has a stronger taste. So I would do lower ratio of meat and that sauerkraut a little bit more. You can even do a ground turkey that it's cooked. You would have to fry it first. You know what you have that maybe you just end up with some extra leftovers and you want to make extra meal. That's what pierogis do. They make your food last longer and utilize those leftovers. So keep that in mind and get creative. And yes, we'll be making more pierogis that they are without meat as well. That meat, it has a perfect consistency. You can even use some of the fat and add it into your pierogis and totally use up that meat. So how about that? Yes, let's cook. You can use less meat and add more sauerkraut. And here I have about a pound of pork. Like I said, that I made that pork roast butt recipe. I will attach the link to it if you are interested in these pierogis, because you are needing some kind of meat for that sauerkraut. However, we are starting with a couple tablespoons of olive oil, most likely, with some onion that is chopped on fairly slow pieces. This is like a small white onion. And just spread it around so everything is touching the surface, because we are just sauteing that, looking for that nice brownish color. It will be going into our filling. So when the onion is cooking, yes, you want to stir it a little bit around. And also, on the meantime, you want to put on the stove a big pot with water. I'm also cooking here my Gerson soup. You see what a beautiful color, isn't it? So going back to pierogis, the pot I would fill up only maybe halfway with water and let it go, and we are looking for that water to boil. And like I said, this is about that pound of pork. I'm using a food processor here. It makes life way easier to chop up on the nice pieces that they will be used in our filling. So that's what I encourage you to do, hopefully that's what you have. Back in the day, actually, believe it or not, my mom would be using a meat grinder. That was another great technique to chop up all that meat to the right consistency, as well as a sauerkraut too, because we will be doing that. That water is actually here to boil the sauerkraut. The sauerkraut, I use about couple cups in here, and it's the fermented sauerkraut. And we are cooking it only for about 10 minutes. I mean, yes, you can cook longer, but I don't really think it's necessary. Just mix it all in and let that water come to a boil, and cook it on that medium high or so for about that 10 minutes, and that should be enough. The sauerkraut doesn't have to be rinsed. This will kind of mellow out the flavor of the sauerkraut by being in here. And yes, check out our website. Things are coming up that there are new things on our website. I don't know if you have been there lately. We are straining the cooked sauerkraut, and we are letting it cool off a little bit. So yes, use a strainer, and I put it like in the bowl to collect all the water that it's dripping on its own, and press it out a little bit. I add that sauerkraut to my food processor. You can take your meat out, but I didn't mind that meat getting chopped up a little bit more with the sauerkraut together here, and you don't want to really make a paste out of it. You are looking still for little chunks of that meat. You are looking for a little bit of piece of that sauerkraut in there as well. And if the meat was already too chopped up for you, take it out and just mix the sauerkraut, chop it in the food processor. And like I said, it doesn't have to be completely vaporized. You're just looking for that nice chopped up consistency. In the same food processor, I'll be making the dough. My other recipe with the cheese and potatoes, I did it by hand. This is to show you how to do it in a food processor. We are using 3.5 cups of sifted flour that is unbleached. I do add that 1 egg. You don't have to. I kind of like for that color, like I keep saying. And a couple tablespoons of oil. I prefer to use grapeseed oil or avocado oil. Pinch of salt. And you will need about 1.25 cups of very warm water, but don't add all that at once. Normally you have the opening at the food processor because you have to cover it every single time you're using it. You can't even use it if you don't put the lid on it. You can add that water through it, but you can also open it and check it for consistency. You want the dough to be soft. If it's too soft, you can always add flour. If it's too hard, yes, you can add water. So kind of do it slowly as you are going, and touch that dough to make sure it is nice and soft. That's what worked for me for that flour. Sometimes the flour varies and it might be slightly different. And again, we are working with a nice clean surface that you want to dust well with flour to take the dough out. And I still work it a little bit with my hand until I get that nice little ball that I can work from there. And you see my hands are a little bit dusted with flour as well. You want to make sure that way the dough it's easier to work with. If it's a little bit too soft, just keep adding flour a little at a time, and it will change the consistency. But this dough, you do want it, however, to be soft enough to be workable as well. So if you have any questions, I keep remind you, add some comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And you see we have a nice little round ball here. When you're setting that aside, make sure you add some flour underneath it as well, and let it sit for about 30 minutes covered like I did here with the ball, kitchen towel, or saran wrap. In the meantime, we are going back to our filling. We are adding salt and pepper, about 1/2 teaspoon of each. If you like things a little bit saltier, maybe you want to add a little bit more. And here comes our onion with those beautiful colors. And I didn't care if that got chopped up in the food processor. If you wanted to, you can do that too. But this is fine consistency for me. Just mix everything very well all the way to the bottom. We always want to mix things getting all the way to the bottom. And you see it's a nice consistency. It still falls apart, but it's not a paste. I wouldn't really care for chopping it that much. And we are ready for our filling to go in our pierogi. Believe it or not, pierogis originally, they were poor people food. They were trying to come up with things for food to last longer. And originally, like I said, they were in poor homes, but eventually they made it to the table of nobles as well. So we are cutting our dough on 4 pieces here. You can cut it on 3, but that's how many times you will be rolling it out basically. And always cover that dough that it's remaining on the side. And always dust your surface, always dust your hands. And I always start with making like a little disc like that. It always helps to roll out a little bit less, and it has a nice shape to get started on the rolling. And you see, always dust the dough too on the top as well and the bottom. Kind of spread it out around, and we always flipping that dough around while you're rolling it out with your pin here. So always make sure that it's not getting too stuck. If you have too much flour, you can always push it aside, just like I did with the dough even. And you are looking for about that 1/8, 1/16 of thickness of the dough that you will be working with. And keep on rolling and keep on flipping, and a little bit of flour as well. Not too much. When you're going to have too much flour, when you are gluing pierogi together, it will not like to stick. So you just want to have enough to roll it out, and enough not to get stuck to your surface that you are working with. And you see, I like to flip it to make sure that I'm not sticking to anything on the bottom out there. And if you have to, you can add slightly a little bit more flour to it. And on the meantime, I don't know how quick you will be making them, so you might want to adjust that to whatever your abilities are. I like to set a pot of boiling to bring the water to boil. This time I'm filling that up about 3/4. This is 4 quarts pot, and of course with some salt. When my dough is rolled out, dig out that cookie cutter or just a glass like that, as long as it doesn't break on you, and just something with a sharp enough edge to make those little circles again, just like I showed you in my other video. And they are about that 3 inches in diameter. So wherever you have out there, that would work for that, about 3 inches or so. If you make them bigger, they will be bigger. If you make them smaller, they will look prettier too when they are little, but it will take you longer to do it. So it seems like that 3-inch is something that it's most common in diameter to cut those little circles. And just do the best you can, just doing one very close to another. That way you're coming up with the most out of your dough at each time. And you will be putting, of course, the filling and rolling the next piece of the dough and doing it over and over again. Yes. So we are adding good amount of stuffing here. The stuffing, it's not really moist, that it's hard to work with. And the pierogi are better when they are fuller. And it seems like once you cook them, the filling almost like it disappears in them in some ways. So you don't want to overfill them, because you want to make sure you have clean edges to seal them together. And you see, just roll it like that and pinch it together. Roll and pinch, roll and pinch. And if you don't want to go through all that trouble, you don't have to. This is a double seal in some ways, and I have never had pierogis that they open up on me and the filling came out. So I highly recommend for you to practice. And yes, practice makes perfect, and you can impress your company with making that kind of fancy pierogis. We always made them that way. And I'm showing you this all over again. You see, you want to seal it a couple of times, just like that, to make sure that nothing opens up for you. If you are leaving them that way, you can do indentation with some fork on those edges, or just pinch them together, whichever way you want it. But like this makes a nice little crown almost around that pierogi, and it seals it nicely for you. And we are always setting them always on an also dusted either cutting board. I found it's the best, because I just pick up that board, bring it to my boiling pot with water, and put them in one at a time. Because yes, we are putting them one at a time, not all of them at once, because they all splash you. So that's another recommendation here. And you see, once you do a few of those and work on a distance of that little trim there, it will come out prettier and prettier. And on the beginning, not every pierogi looks like that, so don't worry. And when you are putting them in the water, you see I kind of almost put that tip of the pierogi in the water. Don't burn yourself, don't put your fingers in there, But if you get that pierogi close enough to water just to barely touch it, the water does not splash. And you want to stir it with something gentle, like the wooden spoon, all the way from the bottom. And you see they go back to the bottom again. So I highly recommend for you to come back and do that again, because this is the timing that they like to stick to each other, or they might just stick to the bottom of your pot all over again. And don't forget that pot water was salted. So we're just waiting for them to come up to the surface. And once they coming up to the surface, you're just cooking them for another minute or two or so, and you will be ready to take them out with a slatted spoon like that. And they will be coming out on like a platter or a plate, or maybe strainer if that's what you want to use, because on the bottom you will have a little bit of water there. You might want to just kind of like, when they cool off, I know my camera is steaming here, but I'm just trying to show you, just take them out and let's maybe drip a little bit down first before you take them out completely, and set it on that plate. And yes, we are going back to rolling another portion of the dough, and we just continue until all our filling is gone. And this is just a repeat to make sure that you're following all those directions here. It's really not that difficult. Once you make it once, I know you will be encouraged if you never made them before. And you see, each time when you are rolling that dough, you're having all those trimmings left over. Don't discard them. This is nothing wrong with it. If you work it all together like this, just few minutes, it will become like nothing happened to that dough, and you can work that dough if you need some more dough for your filling, or you can make some pasta out of that, or I will tell you what else we are doing. I'm not done. And make sure you stay to the end of the video, because I have additional hints for you there, what you can do with that dough, and how else you can make these pierogis. This is not the only one way, and there is more recipes to come too. I told you when my daughters got together, we even made them with fruits. We made them with blueberries. Oh, those are really, really delicious too. And those are very simple to make it. You're just adding a few blueberries and just half a teaspoon, quarter teaspoon of sugar in them. They are not crushed, and you're rolling all that as a filling in the pierogi, and that's it. But you see, tortellini, does that sound familiar? I'm sure you are aware of that. And I will show you just in a second here how to make tortellini out of this dough. Because if maybe pierogis are too hard for you, you can come up with something like that. If that shape is not something you are comfortable with. And tortellini, you can make it so many different ways as well, with different kind of fillings. And this is just a Polish version of tortellini, I would call it. So yes, we are rolling out that dough just like we did for the pierogi, the same kind of thickness, and like an oval shape or so. And we will be cutting it to strips. Depends how big you want to make them. I would recommend anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches or so. Yeah, you can make them bigger if you don't want to make too many little ones. And the key is to cut squares out of the dough. You will not be using anything that does not form a square that you cut the dough. So any trimming pieces, they going back to get rolled up all over again. And yes, you can use tools to make those squares a little bit more accurate. I kind of always ballpark it, and I work with that. And like I said, you are just looking for that square dimensions on each piece of dough that you are working with. And all you do is, again, you take some of the filling, as much as you can fit, but not overdo it, to make sure that you can ensure that perfect closure of the edges. I like to press it into the middle, and you see opposite corners, they go together just like that, and you seal the edges and just push that filling a little bit in to make sure that your edges are nice and clean, just like that. Double seal it. I always like to double seal it. As many as pierogis I made, I always do that. and then just pinch the corners like that, and there it comes. Yes, you can have fancy things to help you to make it, but guess what? It works, doesn't it? And you just keep on making those, and you can serve those with broths. You can make those with sauce. The possibilities are endless. It depends on what you feel like that day. And you see, again, opposite corners. Seal the edges, just like that. Push the filling in a little bit deeper if it's coming out. And out of that triangle, we're just connecting those corners right there. And there it is. And just keep on going until your filling is done. Whichever way you want to make them, you can make them round, you can make them square, and you can make them little tortellinis like that. So it is really up to you how much fun you want to have with it, how many helpers you have, and how they feel that day, how to make them. This is really easy. And even if your shape it's not completely square, you can kind of reshape it, push things in, and just connect the edges, and it comes out just fine. This is very forgiving kind of recipe. And again, just seal it together. And always set it again on a flour dusted surface. And you see, when the pierogis are fresh, you can just serve them with butter. You can serve them, originally they were served with lard, and people lived a long time. And my grandma lived to be 92. And you see, you can also fry them. You can either defrost them and fry them. You can reheat them that way. It's normally butter or coconut oil I use. I really like to use coconut oil. It's very not taste. It's very good for high frying cooking out there. It's very good as well. But you can also grapeseed oil or avocado oil, or if you want to go with butter, or if you want to go with bacon. Oh my! You see how cute we can look in presentation? How about that? So here you have different shapes, different type of pierogis again. And like I said, I am not done. We will be posting more pierogis recipes. I told you, people, they got very creative, and I'm sure you came across different kind of dumpling out there with something with different variations. And they look so pretty when they are nice and crispy. They taste so good. They look so pretty with that color as well. And you can serve them whichever way you want them. And again, don't forget, you can freeze them. You can make so much more. Each recipe that I made, I came up with close to 3 dozen pierogis, give or take. So that's, keep something like that in mind, because if you double recipe, you can have a lot of leftovers. And guess what? You don't even need a fork to eat them. When they are just the right temperature, you can just pick them up with your fingers, and they are great for lunch to bring it with you. And oh, look at that stuffing. Picture perfect. And I have the evidence of how good they were. See what I'm talking about? That was my husband's plate. But here I am giving you a tip for the leftovers of the dough. I'm telling you, yes, you can make a pasta and just cut it to strips and cut it to strings, whichever way you want it. But I actually did something else. You'll take about a bigger size than a golf ball, but smaller than a tennis ball, definitely smaller size of the dough, and you roll it out as thin as you can as well. And then if you take a frying pan with nothing in it, just preheat it to good heat, and then put your dough in and cook it on that golden color on each side, you have a little wrap to go with it, and you can serve it with eggs the next day for breakfast. And here you have the leftovers totally utilized. I like to store my pierogis either in a Ziploc bag like this. This is a gallon Ziploc bag, or I do it in big enough plastic containers that I lay pierogis with parchment paper in between. So I know you will enjoy them. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time for a new pierogi recipe and more.